Welcome back to this week's podcast. And on today's podcast, Inside the Autism Classroom, I'm once again joined by my co-host, Elaine Fitzgerald, an experienced autism class teacher. And today we're going to focus on the topic of regulation and co-regulation. So I suppose, Elaine, for any of our listeners, and I suppose in particular, maybe new teachers to an autism class or indeed SNAs or any other colleagues that might find themselves working in an autism class maybe for the first time, or maybe returning to an autism class after a number of years where maybe practices have changed. I suppose from your perspective, going into the autism class for the first time, say this coming September, teachers and SNAs and colleagues that may be thinking about regulation and co-regulation strategies, is there anywhere that you think they should maybe think about starting, just from your, I suppose, experience as a professional?
I suppose in my own experience, I would like for me, it's the sign on my door on the front of my classroom says, "In this classroom, we believe in," and then there's a list of things, and the top one is regulation first, and that's it. And like if that's a really good starting point when you realize that this is science based. This isn't kind of um airy fairy kind of stuff. This is coming from this kind of the academic period, the pyramid of learning, period of academic learning, and the bottom of it is all about your the senses and sensory everything processing, and it basically says if the child or adult is not regulated, like that's the big piece. Your body is not ready to learn, your brain is certainly not ready to learn, and then at the very top is the academic bit. So like this has to all come first, and trying to push academics or trying to do work with a child if they're not regulated, it's first of all, it's kind of irresponsible, and I think, in my opinion, and I think it can be harmful in many ways. Certainly, you're not going to any work done, so you may give up on that dream. So the first thing to do, I suppose, is to do a little bit of training from a good quality, experienced OT who can tell you about what regulation is and all about. I remember doing a super one years ago for a summer course, and it was just eye-opening. I have to say, the different. I kind of knew the five senses, but then you go into all the other ones, the proprioceptive and all that I knew nothing about. Um, but then when it came to it, actually just realizing that regulation is point one. That's it, and then getting some good quality training into all of that. That would be the start for me. Um, yeah, to just, I suppose, appreciate that it is as important as it is. Day one.
Amazing. And I suppose in relation to that, I was just chatting to you about this just before I started the recording, is that this is an incredible resource that I know many schools are now embracing. And thankfully, most schools now are moving away from, I can't think of the name of that. I think it's zones of regulation.
Regulations,
It's
yeah.
so thanks be to God, they're moving away. And now we're all moving towards, for example, which this will be like my number one resource on energy, or I suppose it is energy
Mhm.
regulation by Autism Level Up. I met the team from Outside the Box Learning Resources at an As I Am conference about 2 years ago, I'm going to say, and this was the only copy that they had on the stand, and they told me they just printed it that day. And I'd been waiting for this to come to Ireland, and I was like, is that the first print? They were like, yeah. I was like, I need to buy this. And they're like, well, we need it for the day just to show people. I was like, can you keep it? I'll come back and buy it later. And they're like, yes. So I had the first one in Ireland.
Yeah.
So again, it's well read, well used. And every time I deliver training in schools, I tell them all about it. I think you were chatting earlier, Elaine, about their energy meter as well. That's something that
Yes.
we'd use here in the house. So again, do you think that would be useful maybe for new teachers to think about maybe purchasing a book like, or that resource, the energy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the training is super. You can often do the training through, I
Yeah.
did it through Tralee Education Centre online, and oh, it was absolutely amazing. And like to get the actual, people the authors to do the training is
Yeah.
just,
Amy and
such a
Jack.
gift. It was super. Yeah, it's lovely. They're so
Yeah.
like and all the
Aren't they
resources are
lovely?
online for you. It's so
Yeah. And,
personalized.
and and if you can get to a training, they'll explain to you literally live. But again, you can get all, I believe you can get all the resources on the website, but I think the handbook, from my perspective, like
Yeah,
explains the thinking and the theory behind it. So as you can
100%.
probably see by my background, I love a good book. So I suppose
No.
from your point of view, then a new teacher coming into the autism class, they might be thinking lots of different things they need to be focusing on eventually, but it has to start first with regulation. You have to be focused on, I suppose, what's called creating felt safety, and that co-regulation piece is really important. So they have to have, do you think, reflective practice in how they're presenting each day, and what their student might be picking up from them as the professional in the room, say if they're feeling a bit nervous or anxious? I suppose, can you speak to that potentially?
Totally. And I think the NCSE Relate document as well looks at that co-regulation part really, really nicely, because it says, you have to be the calm to their storm, or I can't remember how they phrase it, but it's basically like, and I think that's really important when you're working as part of a team. There's going to be days where you haven't slept, you've been up with a child during the night, and you're exhausted, you're feeling a bit vulnerable yourself. And on those days, if a child is dysregulated, you're not the one for them. And you're going to have to identify that and decide that as a team, to say, do you know what? I think I need somebody who's more regulated, another adult, to an SNA to maybe support that child, because you have to make sure that the child in need of regulation gets the most regulated adult in the room, at that point. And that's part, going back to the conversation as the team, to say it is regulation first. And I think the Relate document for me has been a total game changer, because it cannot be clearer. I would always have felt that way, but I have no documents back it up. I don't have any letters after my name. I'm just a teacher, and that's how I feel. But feeling in things and being able to prove it, or even the department, if I have an inspector that comes in and says, "Well, Elaine, where's your maths book, and why aren't you doing this?" And I'm like, "Here's my NCSE Relate document, and I'm going to tell you why, because the child is not regulated." So, so that is above all else. And the co-regulation is so important. And that comes to, we talked a little bit in the first episode about, how do you kind of get to know and build relationships? And that's all very much connected, is that, just sometimes sitting with them and having the crack, and relaxing, and having a little chat, but not talking too much, that's all part of it too. So I think it's so important, the co-regulation. But again, you need to make sure you're prepared for that too. Definitely.
It reminds me also of another book that may or may not be over my shoulder, because I'm not sure where I put it. It's the one by Maya Tudor, and I cannot ever think of the other gentleman's name, although he's very well known in his own right, and rightfully so. It's not there. Oh, here it is. Energy accounting. What is that man's name? Tony Atwood. So they do a great book again. Sorry, this is not, I don't have a library. Oh, I technically do, but this is not a library book recommendation series. But if you were thinking about energy regulation, that's a great one by Autism Level Up. And more maybe concise in a different way. Now, this looks at energy through accounting. So it's a different way to understand energy, is Energy Accounting by Maya Tudor and Tony Atwood. Again, not sponsored, also available from Outside the Box Learning Resources. And again, it's a very meaty book again, but it does give you good resources. But maybe that's more a resource once you're more getting to know your students, and especially if they have the
Yeah.
capacity to understand what takes their energy and what gives them energy. But it may not be suitable for everyone, but it is another your affirmative book on
I
energy
know.
regulation.
Yeah. I love to kind of move away from, um, like we would have talked a lot about emotional regulation, the zones and everything, and about, like basically for me, it kind of, and like we used the zones for years when it was all that was there, and when we
Of course.
at the time it was super for a while, till we once you know better, you do better, So, um, but it was this. I find that there's a lot of shame in being sad or feeling angry or whatever, and
Mm.
then I find that kids will be less likely to say I feel, and then point to the sad face or the angry face, because it's nearly like, they're embarrassed enough if they're
They
feeling
feel judged or
dysregulated.
something.
That, so whereas this kind of move away from emotional regulation towards like energy, where's my energy at, where it's kind of fidgety or amped up, or quieter, so I feel like there was one child in particular in my class that if we talked about feelings or anything, he would tend to go happy, as if to say, yes, I'm just going to humor you now, because I know you'll stop annoying me if I just tell you something.
Oh,
But even if I knew he was feeling a bit low, he would be he would not ever point to any of the sad faces or whatever. So I feel like this move towards energy, he would say that he's feeling a bit tired or a bit,
that's what I
he would
like
point to
about
that.
the energy meter. Isn't it really great?
Yeah,
Whereas I think if I was to
totally.
say which of those two resources, I would say the Autism Level Up. I think if you had students that may be able to identify themselves,
Mm.
how they're feeling or whatever's going, then that might be a better one for that. But actually, no, they're both excellent. But I just think this might be too complex for many people. But the Autism Level Up, I think it's very accessible the way that they have created it. And that's even for individuals that are non-speaking. Like my son Connor would definitely be able to use, maybe he wouldn't be a fan of dinos. He's more into Richie Kavanagh, the guy with the Breakfast Roll song. He likes that. So like if you want to see Connor really moving, I'd have that at the top there. That'd be him amped up. But
Yeah,
again, Autism Level Up, great resources. I suppose
yeah.
I was just thinking there about students, and just going back to, I suppose, the zones of regulation and kind of, there's no shame to any school maybe listen to the podcast that might be something that you're using currently and you didn't know about, or whatever. Totally okay. Like, same as I have a billion books in this office, but I didn't learn everything I learned all at once. I've learned it over 20 years, in the same way everything you've learned as an incredible teacher. And also, by the way, you said earlier, you're just a teacher. You're by far just a teacher, and any teacher listening to this call, I just think, and I know all of our communities that have any child, whether it's a child who's neurodivergent or not, you're never just a teacher, or you're never just an SNA, you're just phenomenal human beings. You make life possible for me, but you help my children have futures. So you're not just a teacher, you're amazing. But I suppose what I wanted to say to anyone listening, don't feel shameful or anything. You do the best you can. Same as the things I learned years ago that I would not engage in now. So it's just, knowledge is power. You learn as you go. So don't feel shamed or whatever. Just do the best you can with the knowledge you have. So again, do you think for teachers that might not be used to working with autistic students that are stimming, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Why that's important? I might see, can I find the poster? I'll be listening in the AirPods while you're talking. I think it's over here on my desk.
Yeah, I suppose come back to everything. Everything is so individual, and I think that's why the training for Autism Level Up was brilliant, because they said, what I look like when I'm trying to learn and what another child looks like when they're trying to learn are like completely different things. I need, personally for me, I need sound in the background. I need all of that, whereas other people would need complete silence. So there's children that I work with that need silence. They need quiet space. They need a not too dark, like that low arousal kind of approach. And then there's kids who would learn to read like jumping on a trampoline. Just they need to be absolutely rattled. Physically, just need go, go, go. And I've had kids in my class who would read a page for me. They go off and they do 10 jumps on the trampoline and back again. And I think we need to, as teachers, you need to kind of get over yourself a little bit, because I did anyway. I was kind of like, well, sit down. It's like, do you not sit down and do a bit of work? But that you need to lose that kind of idea in your head that the children sit in their seats and they learn, because it's going back to that first episode of unlearning so many things that we would kind of go for in mainstream that just doesn't work. So you do have to realize that some children are going to would like to hang upside down off a monkey bar, and that is where they'll do their maths calculation or their mental maths, and it's unorthodox, but if it works, why not? And that's why I'm talking about, I suppose, in an autism class. That's why I love the job as much as I do. I have that flexibility. They can lie where they want. They can sit in beanbag and do their work. And that's why for me, for regulation, flexible seating is really important, so that like they can sit where they're comfortable. We do morning meeting every day. We have one guy likes to sit on the windowsill. There's somebody else sits on a chair that likes it on the chair. Somebody else could be rolling around on the mat on the floor. And when it comes to their turn to answer something, they'll hop up, they do the bit, and they go down and roll again. Like, well, sure, if you're happy, who am I to stop you? And sometimes go down and have a little roll as well. See, I want to see what all the fuss is about. So, for me, that's really important. And again, I'm going to go back and back and back. Everyone has to be on board with that. You can't have the teacher deciding that children are allowed to sit flexibly, and then someone else is like, come on, sit down, come on now, it's time to, they have to say, no, it's okay, that's what we do. So there are discussions that need to be had before the kids get in the door, so that everyone is singing off the same hymn sheet, so they get a consistent approach to for regulation.
That's amazing. And suppose again, it goes back to what you're saying. We kind of unlearn what maybe we thought from before. Again, we do the best with the knowledge that we have, but we know more now. And as you say there, it's looking at the way that the students are regulating it's completely okay. We're kind of moving away from I suppose what's referred to as a neuronormative way of viewing, what should be done or what is the correct way of being. And instead we're trying to embrace the students just as they are, and accepting as we all stim. Like I think every time you're talking, I generally put a pen to my mouth to stop myself from talking over you, because I'm like, I can't read the cues. I'm like, I think I'll speak now, I'm not sure. Or I move in my chair all the time. That helps me regulate. Or just before the call, you saw me like moving around trying to like find the light to get it stop glaring into my eyes. So we all do different things all the time, just to accommodate ourselves. We do things all the time to stim, and that for teachers going in for the first time, do expect to see students stimming, do expect to see students moving around. For autistic people, it's really important for our well-being and our mental health. So it would definitely be a no-no to stop a person. So we really want to kind of bring that kind of information to the fore. That's the poster I was like dashing around trying to find. Again, this is on the Autism Level Up website. And again, this is just one I was filling out for Jack. We're talking about it because I'm trying to prepare him ahead of time for secondary. So we were just chatting about what does he need. So he kept, sorry, that was my attempt to draw on Jack very badly today without glasses. But again, it was looking at different ways to think about. So if you do have those posters in your classroom with the quiet hands and the quiet whatever, just think to yourself, if I asked you, if I came into a meeting with you and I said, I'm going to call anyone listening Mary, again, apologies to any Marys out there, I'm just picking a name. So if I was like, now Mary, we're in a meeting for the rest of the meeting now, please don't move your head, don't move your hands, have a happy smile on your face, doesn't matter what I'm saying now, don't move your body. Like, it would be horrendous, like, wouldn't it? So what we want is for real people living in the real world, just like Bumper, being able to move their bodies as best they can. And again, as the incredible teacher, incredible SNA listening, to think of your impact. And as you rightfully said, Elaine, at the start, it's really important that those discussions are had early and that everyone is in agreement, that we don't say if you're out on a training day or SNA is out and somebody comes in or whatever the reason, that is the policy of the room, that doesn't shift on the day, because that will have mega repercussions for the students, and you will find it, say if you're gone for a few days and someone takes over. Would that have ever been something, I suppose, that you have to kind of chat to this team about, say if you know you're going to go for a few days, or is that something that maybe anyone listening should consider talking to all the team?
I have to say the staff in my school are just amazing. They're just so inclusive and so child-led and so just love kids and love their job as well as kind of all of the other lovely words. They're just, and they're very much like, I went into when I started in the autism class first, I was like, right, this is what I'm going to do, and I kind of need us all to be on board. And it's never been an issue ever at all. We're so lucky. And then another, I suppose, option and I've met a lot of autism class teachers that would have talked about it, that there's a consistent sub that covers. So it's not like random people coming in left, right, and center. So I have kind of two teachers that have covered me all year, and they're just amazing. They are just, I mean, they're far more experienced than I am actually, but just happen to be on career break and whatever, that they're available for me. And because I had the postgrad the last 2 years, I have a lot of NCSE training, and I'm gone for 3 days at a time sometimes, which isn't ideal. And there's a real like mom guilt there, teacher guilt for being gone. But it's also everything, all this training. Then I come back and I'm like, oh, this is what we're going to do. And it's going to be so good for the kids. So like, it's all for them. So I have to kind of make my peace with it. But also it's been really good for their flexibility for other adults in the room, because they're going to go into secondary school someday and have different teachers coming and going, and they need to be prepared for other teachers working with them. So that is a conversation that I have had at the start, but to be honest, I didn't really need to. Like, if I was to name the two ladies right now, which I'm not going to, I'm very appreciative of them if they're listening, but you'd be like, oh, right, of course they're going to be amazing. So I I talk about roughly what I need kind of at the start, and then they do their own thing. But what I did do is I have like a all about me, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a resource we put together. It's part of the school policy that I have it. And like for the older children that are speaking, they consult on this document. They say what they need, and it also has like a little bit at the bottom that says, when I'm regulated, this is what I look like. And again, the older kids help us with this. They decide what's written. I'm not writing it for them. This is what I look like when I'm regulated. This is what you should do. If this is what happens when I'm feeling a little bit wobbly, and I suppose the Autism Level Up energy meter, when I'm here, this is what is best for me. And then when I am dysregulated and I'm clearly struggling, not to use a negative word, but they're heading for a crisis basically. This is what you should do. And everyone's is obviously different. And for the boys in my class that are not speaking, we put together something for them, obviously, and in consultation with parents during SSB meetings and things like that. So I think that kind of goes with them to mainstream, and it's there in their little shelf if they have a new teacher in or somebody in that. So that's those kind of different approaches. And then the NCSE Relate stressor tool as well is something that, if you're going in September day one, you're going to have to observe for a while. You're not going to know. And then getting feedback of parents is huge at that point for regulation as well. When you're going into six strangers, you might have six kids you don't know. So that'd be my tip for anyone.
Amazing. And again, for anyone listening to the podcast, Elaine and myself are right now, so you'll be listening to this podcast when they're all recorded. I am hoping that we'll have them all recorded and done by the time this goes out. But we are currently working on a variety of resources we're collaborating on. So you'll have, I suppose, anyone listening will be able to access those again in the description of this podcast. At that point, I'll have figured out where I'm going to store these so that you can access them. But one of the things that just occurred to me, that you're on about a communication passport or all about me, I have some available on the Little Puddins website, so I'll put a link somewhere in the description. And again, to the best of my knowledge, they're absolutely in your affirmative. But again, as always, I'll read over them just to make sure, because I develop things over years and then I update them. So I'll make those available. And then also separately, we've developed a resource called an ITM. So it's an in the moment. So supporting the person in context. So say if you're a person that in the moment you maybe didn't get a chance for a variety of reasons, or maybe you've forgotten, it's now midway through the year and you can't place your hand on the communication passport. So this is a one pager, like in the moment, if Amanda is very distressed, it'll have a little section on, not to say this is to be used in conjunction with the bigger document, but this is like a in the moment, pull out the resource. Okay, say if someone comes in or something's going on and we're not sure and it's a sudden crisis, so that resource will be there as well for everybody. And again, read the description. By the time this goes out, I'll know where that's going to be stored. I suppose maybe then as a final question, I suppose, are there any tools, resources, say in terms of maybe tough trays or fidget boxes, or are there any things that you would think, if someone's thinking, what resources should I have ahead of time before I start in
Yeah.
the autism class, that might be useful, especially for those first few weeks?
Yeah, I suppose for my gang, sensory play was on my schedule, my first schedule always, and some, I have there's only 6 children, but then the range of what they love and they don't love is huge within that group. So there are some kids who love messy play. It's a good option to start with, I would say. That tough tray has been upturned more times than I have had hot dinners. But shaving foam doesn't come out very easily. I just want to let everyone know. How and ever, I had this fabulous idea at the start of the year, and if the SNAs are listening, they want to say, "Oh no, don't talk to me." I was like, I'll bring in rice, and it'll be so nice. And for a minute, yeah, it was fab, and then it went upside down. And I'm not joking. It is June the 2nd, and we're still finding rice in parts of that classroom that I didn't think existed. Dark holes. I don't know. So you'll know as soon as you put something out, you'll know they'll go for it or they'll no, thank you, absolutely not. I don't. Some of them love water. I think water play is just so important, and just you need to ask for, like when I do out my book list in June, it'll be like I need spare clothes, spare clothes, spare clothes. Short of putting a full kind of oil suit on them, which is not really convenient. People are going to get wet, people are going to get messy. Such is life. If it regulates them, do it. It's only shaving foam. I'd use things like Deals is the cheapest for shaving foam. Take it from somebody who has spent a small fortune at this point. Shaving foam. I like conditioner, bath foam, anything that kind of lather up a little bit. And then it's a nice opportunity to practice washing hands and that kind of wash hands. They're so cute without being like, come on, you have to wash your hands. So there's all that modeling that can go on. And I think as well, especially at the start, if you're trying to get to know the child, it's good to be in it, go up to your elbows and shaving foam. It's not going to kill it's just be willing to get messy and to play and have fun and build those relationships. But that'd be the main thing. So sensory items, fidgets, obviously, like a box of fidgets, leave them around the classroom. Again, there's this kind of a feeling of wanting to tidy things up. But if things are where they need to be, the kids will put them where they need to be. The kids will decide where they need to be. So if there's fidgets all over the work with teacher table, that's not distracting them. That's obviously where they've decided they need to be in order to learn. So things like that. And again, it's go back to get to know the child, do your checklists. And there was one thing that came into my head there is, if I could ever just stop talking, that would be really helpful. But is regulation or dysregulation looks really different for a lots of kids. I did amazing training last week in Dublin, and we talked about what does dysregulation look like in your classroom. And I said laughing kind of manically, or even just laughing normally, can actually be a sign that you're really dysregulation. I have no idea how it fits in my body. So, look out for those signs that are not traditional signs, and that's why just getting to know your child and communicating with parents at home and saying, what does it look like? There can be often a child could say a one word that actually means I'm dysregulated, so things like that. That's the kind of stuff that you would put home on a questionnaire. And that's something I will share actually, is the questionnaire I sent home. And again, not perfect, but it was useful. It was really helpful for me, and goals for your child and life skill goals for your child and all that kind of thing. So they're things I would definitely be asking. Yeah. And have a good store of everything. Flour, oobleck, corn flour, corn flour, corn flour, all day long. It's cheap,
I was
which is good.
thinking of something else you said. Oh, thank you. Sorry. No problem. Just my husband saying he's going in to pick up Haley from work. I suppose something else that occurred to me there when you were saying like it can be like manic laughing or something. Sometimes, as you say, it can be that one word. And it just occurred to me about Jack, my oldest boy. So he's in sixth class now in Incredible Knockruski in Westport. And if you hear him saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, that's him now. You can just see things are spiraling, even though he's just going, I don't know. I don't know. That's the panic rising. So just as you
Yeah,
said that, I thought, geez, good point. Because
yeah,
I might have said, you might see something visibly. Sometimes it is a word that's giving you,
yeah,
or the sound, or maybe it's
yeah,
someone, the way they're using I said we call it a speech device in our house, a talker, because that's what Connor calls it. Could be the way maybe they're trying to find the word or something they're trying to say. And you can just see maybe there's frustration there. Or as you say, it could be that masked dysregulation where someone is kind of laughing and then you're thinking, oh, I don't know, does that mean something? So I suppose get, as you say, and you said last week, get to know your child, really figure them out, and don't jump the gun and just think, oh, that's what that means. You have to be curious. You have to think about, and what's your role in this? And just something else that occurred to me that I don't really work with little ones anymore, but over the years I've kind of either volunteered or worked directly with, I suppose, especially younger children that are autistic. And if you watch me on the podcast and on the video format, I'm dressed in black. I'm not a Johnny Cash fan, but I always wear black. My mom will always say I'm ready for, oh, we're matching. She'd always say I'm ready for a funeral. I have so many black suits and black. I just prefer it. But if I was, again, if I was ever lucky enough, the dream role to become a teacher and work with children directly, I'd be very conscious. Sorry, especially if I worked in an autistic class, I'd be very conscious of the clothing that I'm wearing, because from an autistic perspective, even though it might look absolutely fabulous on you, it might be highly dysregulating for the person, because a lot of our incredible students visually can become very dysregulated because they're taking in so much information. So for me, from since time began, I always wore black if I was going into a house, if I was going into, say, an environment where I would have been involved in, as I am,
yeah.
summer camps over the years, I would have worn jet black. And that's because it's a predictable colour. You wouldn't have caught me. I don't think anyone's ever caught me in a bit of a change of a colour of the black. Occasionally, I wear a different colour blazer from delivering trainings to people. I do have other clothes, but I generally would wear black, and I would be very careful with perfume. And even Jack, anytime I put on makeup, my son Jack would be like, "What's wrong with your face?" And I just regulate by my. It's obviously my poor attempt at makeup, as you can probably see this evening. But the point is, what you're doing and what you're wearing is just as important as all the other tools and the environmental kind of assessments that you've carried out as well, and using all the resources. Just consider, as you say, you're going to get down and dirty at the sensory trays and all the things. So maybe don't consider wearing your best clothes in. Be ready to muck in and have fun. Would you think that's a
Bring a
valid
spare
point?
clothes for yourself as well. Just a little, just in case, because when the tough tray goes, it's all off, you know. And actually, we had a day last year where one of the SNAs came in and she had writing on her t-shirt, just like, like Paris or something from
Yeah.
pennies, And one of the fellas is like, no, that it will go away. And in the end, she's like, what am I going to do? It's 9 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, turn it inside out. So she did. So she went around all day with the t-shirt inside out. And then he couldn't see. And he just looked up and down. He was like, yes. And walked as if to say, it's fine, that'll do. But lovely that he could communicate it, obviously. But he
Amazing, yeah.
he was very clear that that was, and
But
he didn't say
imagine if he
anything.
couldn't, and
I
then like,
know,
not the lady's fault. Like that's her clothing she likes to wear.
100%.
But doesn't just show though that your clothing, that's literally proves the point. It does actually have an impact.
Yeah.
Not to suggest, and by the way, we're not suggesting you wear black because people are autistic. That's just my preference personally to wear black. It always, even when I was young, I've like four beautiful model like sisters. They're amazing, beautiful ladies. They're very girly. I never was. I have always been wearing black hoodies. There's pictures of me just dressed in black. Other than when my mom used to buy me clothing, I was wearing pinks, and I was like, never again. But like I've consistently worn
This is
black all throughout my life,
dysregulating.
and yeah, I just find it really. This is just what I wear, and if I was going out, I'd wear black. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
But the point is, though, I have noticed anecdotally working with people that are autistic. Again, not because it's black, but again, it goes back to P for predictability or C for consistency. It does create the opportunity for regulation there as opposed to
Yeah.
dysregulation. Again, not to say for anyone listening, we're not suggesting you wear black because your students are autistic. That's just what I like to wear. I'm just saying,
Yes.
just think about the impact of the clothing as well, and perfumes and all the bits. Even though it's lovely for yourself autonomously to choose, but if you're working with students that are a little bit different, it might be something worthwhile to consider. I suppose just to round up then, to end for today's podcast, is there anything else you think maybe as a final note you want to say on maybe regulation and supporting autistic students that you think maybe as a maybe afterthought for people to think, or maybe things you didn't consider at the start that now with all your experience you would be like, oh, should have done that or
Yeah.
something like that?
And having checklists as well, because some people are like, I don't even know where to start. Like you're obviously your NCSE stressor tool, but you need to know your child quite well to do that. That doesn't give you really a starting point. So like you're going to get information from parents. information from previous teachers about regulation, what is regulating and what is not. And then, but there's some lovely, now there's the NCSE has some sensory checklists, and so do Middletown. I don't know if they're the same ones actually. And there's a disclaimer that these ones, a lot of them they do not use neuroaffirming language, or you know what I mean. They're just old. They're just old. Nobody was trying to offend anybody. So just look at them and think, look at the date on them. They're perfect for their age. And you just have to skim over the bits that are not neuroaffirming, in my opinion. But they are very helpful for someone who doesn't know. And the other thing I want to say is I did training with Dee Hogan from Middletown, who is just amazing, inspirational woman. I just sat there with my mouth open for hours listening to her. And she is very clear about staying in your lane. She's like, you're a teacher and you're a professional, and you're there to educate children. And in order to educate them, you need to be regulated. But at the same time, there is a place and a time to get OT support. And we can't come up with certain children and certain types of dysregulation needs support, and that means you go to your key contact in the NCSC or the CDNT, and then they will hopefully refer you to the right people. And sometimes, like every system at the minute, the CDNT is overloaded. Everywhere is just up to here, and it can be quite frustrating. And you ring again, and you ring again, and that's the job of the teachers, to advocate and make those phone calls a couple of times, and then invite them out. I'm a big fan of come out, just come out and see what we're doing. Please tell me what I can do differently. I'm really open to being told that I need to pull up my socks or do whatever. So is to do so much in terms of regulation, and then at a point say, okay, when do I need to talk to a professional here? I'm not an OT, I'm a school teacher, and I love that job, but I need to also know that there are other people out there to support. And the NCSE are great as well for putting in a ticket for support. A lot of teachers don't know that that's an option, because it has to be done, I suppose, to the principal of the school to go to the NCSE and ask for support from the autism team, and an advisor can come out to the school and help you. So like there's support out there, but make sure it's okay to ask for help as well if you find like I'm totally lost. And there's such a lovely community like yourself. I have contacted you and said I really could do it, a second pair of ears here, any advice kind of thing. And obviously maintaining the dignity of the child at all times and not talking about anyone in particular, but just saying, in theory, if a child is displaying these certain things, anything I can do to help, So that's kind of why I'm here. That if I could help, one thing I said would be helpful for one teacher, I'd be chuffed. Chuffed.
Amazing. And as you say, nobody's expecting anybody to be the expert on all things autism or any other disability that is in your classroom. It's, as you say, don't feel shame to reach out. Like, we're all asking and leaning on each other and asking for help all the time. I'm very lucky that I suppose over the amount of children that I have, which is not Walton amount, but it is 4 children, which I think by today's standard is considered a large enough family. So I have 4 autistic children. So I have met so many countless incredible teachers, SNAs, psychologists, OTs, SLT. I know so many people I could reach out to now. But what I'm saying is that if you're a teacher in your area, like do as Elaine has just said, reach out to did you just, for anyone listening that might be totally unaware of this, it's reach out to the NCSE team, is that correct?
CSE, yeah, you can put in it. So your principal will put in a ticket for support for a behaviour team or an autism advisor. And then also the CDNT is the Children's Disability Network team. So all of the children in your class will surely have a key contact within that. And it's a good idea. Like one of the emails I put out first at the start of the year is, can you just let me know the name of your child's key contact, and can I have permission to contact them? And I always at the start of the year, I just want to introduce myself. I am Amanda's teacher, and I'm new to it, so I'd love to just check in with you at some point. And is this the best number to call you on if I have any questions or I need support for something? And you also, if you are going to go to the NCC or CDNT, it's really important that you've already put in a little bit of work. The NCSE are straight away going to say, have you looked at the relate document? Have you done the stressors tool? And CDNT are going to do the same. Have you done they tend to go for the kind of old style kind of ABC chart, which I know we don't really use anymore. But they're like, have you documented something that we can work from? They need something concrete to work from. So, if you are going to go and look for that kind of support, and it is there, you may need to wait a little while, which is tricky, but you will. It's good to have some sort of documentation in place to get things rolling, and to show them that you are putting in the effort on your side as well. Even though you are, but we all have to have black and white stuff in front of us to explain. So that'd be my advice on that. front.
And also, I think something just from, I suppose I am a parent to, as I said, the four incredible puddings, although they're all taller than me now, except for Max. I need to stop saying the little puddings, the giant puddings now. But something from my perspective that I think maybe from a teacher perspective, you may not maybe consider is that sometimes you might think, oh God, I don't want the family to think I don't know what I'm doing by asking for this help. Families want you to ask for the help. They want
Yeah,
the best
yeah,
possible outcomes for the children. They know that you
definitely.
have 6 profiles. Say if you're in an autism class listening to the podcast, we know that you have 6 different profiles in the classroom. You're trying to stretch yourself 6 different ways for children, really complex, maybe life experiences, trying to figure out the world for themselves, trying to figure out communication sensory. Nobody's asking you to be all the things because parents, I can't speak for every person, I only speak for myself. I can't be all the things. I'd love to have strong knowledge base in all the areas. I don't. So definitely reach out for the help. There's literally, I would love to hear, and I do hear it from my boys' school. They reach out, they make contact. I think that's a really great point to ask at the start of the year for the key contact and find out if there are any OT, SLT on board. And again, obviously as well, if there is an OT report available, follow the kind of sensory recommendations there as well, would you say?
Absolutely. And I think the thing I find trickiest about reports, the OT reports, is they can, a lot of them are
Outdated.
old, they're outdated, and they were done when they were 5 and now they're 12 kind of thing. So it is that kind of getting them in and asking if they could just update it slightly. Like, you just need, because children change, people change. A lot of the
Yeah, of course.
core kind of regulation needs, I would say, in any of us are the same. Like, since I have been old enough to move around, I have to tie my hair back, so I just pull at the front of my hair all the time. And I will do that for the rest of my days, I've no doubt in my mind. So, like, core things don't change, but then needs change. You could put, hormones into it, that changes everything.
Mm.
So something that's updated is great if you can get it at all. And if you can kind of, I've really, as up the walls as they are, if you can get somebody out to your door and say, look, can you help me with as many as possible, kind of thing, give me some general advice for the room, is there any adjustments you would make to the room as an OT, sort of thing.
Amazing.
So sometimes one thing can help an awful lot of kids, so it is definitely worth.
Again, just as I suppose if you are a teacher that's like, okay, regulation, okay, I need to know about regulation. Where can I start? Again, this is a resource I've purchased. It's not, again, none of these book recommendations are sponsored. As Elaine will tell you, I've been a book fanatic all my life, or resource
Yeah.
fanatic. So this is The Waves of Regulation by a lady I was literally recording a podcast with this morning, by Nikki Smith, occupational therapist. She does a great series on Instagram, Nikki Smith OT, I think it's called, where she calls it the Nervous System Diaries. I think it's phenomenal. But again, there's a podcast, or there will be a link somewhere by the time maybe you listen to this podcast, on the Unfiltered Autistic. But she talks about the waves of regulation instead of the window of tolerance, which was obviously and rightfully so coined by Dr. Dan Siegel. She talks about the window of capacity. So that's really what we've been chit-chatting about all the way through. So they're just 2 resources that she has available. But again, definitely check out her Instagram. She's, even just to give you perspective, because she's giving good qualified OT, again, just snapshots. So again, go to your actually qualified OT at a local level. If you can get, as you say, if you can get them to the school, if you have a report, just check the date in the report, because as the child has grown and developed, some of those needs may have grown and changed over time as well. So I suppose that's it for this week's, or I suppose today's podcast. Tomorrow you'll have another one. So I suppose today's podcast focused on regulation and co-regulation. So huge thanks to my amazing co-host who has given so much of her time, energy and expertise to chit chat about being in an autism class and what maybe are different things that any of the incredible teachers or SNAs that are listening might need to consider in terms of regulation and co-regulation for today. So huge thanks to all. And I suppose we'll be back again tomorrow with the next installment. So thank you. Bye.